Everything you know about the Tyrannosaurus Rex places it in steaming jungles and warm swamps. But the most terrifying member of its family hunted in a place where the sun did not rise for 120 days. Absolute, pitch-black darkness. A suffocating void broken only by the howling wind of an Arctic blizzard. Lightning flashes across the ice. It illuminates a towering, 3-ton silhouette covered in ghostly white plumage. Steaming breath exhales from jaws lined with 4-inch serrated hooks. This is not an anomaly. It is the Nanuqsaurus. A polar tyrannosaur that did not just survive sub-zero temperatures. It weaponized them. You assume extreme cold breeds biological weakness. By the time you understand what this creature built in the dark, you will question every rule of evolution you hold true. It lived in a biome that demanded astronomical amounts of calories. A frozen wasteland where the baseline reality was an endless, apocalyptic winter. Every other predator in this ecosystem was actively shrinking. They underwent insular dwarfism. Insular dwarfism, a biological power-saving mode triggered by collapsing food webs and brutal environmental stress. A physiological surrender to the cold. Yet the Nanuqsaurus grew. It maintained a massive, 3-ton furnace of a body. How does a biological engine that size fuel itself when the sun dies for 4 months straight? The answer lies hidden in the frost. Along with a haunting piece of paleontology trivia. Despite dominating its environment, human science has never found a fully matured adult Nanuqsaurus specimen. We only find juveniles. We only find subadults. The reason why is locked behind the bizarre architecture of its skull. Recent morphological reassessments shattered our early models of this predator. Initially, paleontology classified it as a 1-ton, 6-meter dwarf. The reality is a 300% upscale in estimated mass. A 9-meter, 3-ton polar giant. To keep a 3-ton warm-blooded engine running at -3 degrees Celsius, flesh and scale are not enough. The creature deployed a dense coat of protofeathers. Protofeathers, a cryosurvival thermal armor. These filaments trapped internal furnace heat with an efficiency rivaling modern industrial aerogel. It sealed the core temperature inside the chassis. It locked the freezing death out. But staying warm is useless if you cannot locate fuel in absolute darkness. The perceptual world of the Nanuqsaurus was alien to human biology. Its eyes housed hyperdilated pupils. Where a human retina registers only pitch-black blindness, this creature processed crisp low-light contrast. It saw the microscopic gradients of shadows shifting in the snow. But vision was secondary. Endocast CT scans map the interior volume of its braincase. The data reveals a terrifying anatomical priority. Its olfactory bulbs were massive relative to its cerebrum, dwarfing the ratios found in a standard Tyrannosaurus Rex. An overdeveloped olfactory region, a long-range biochemical radar. Forget the towering monster for a moment, and look closer. While the howling 80km/h winds erase all visual landmarks and turn the physical world into a blinding, featureless void of abrasive ice crystals, a single microgram of decaying Pachyrhinosaurus blood drifts across the tundra, finding its way into a nasal cavity explicitly engineered to decode the geometry of death. Glowing, invisible ribbons of scent travel through the blinding snow. They enter the snout. They illuminate hypercomplex receptors in the brain. The radar locks on. The predator stalks. It finds a massive ceratopsian lumbering through the drifts. Time slows down. The mandible pivots on a reinforced hinge. A wide, robust skull built for absolute kinetic transfer. A hydraulic trash compactor. The jaws clamped shut. Biomechanical estimates, extrapolated from the skull mechanics of its closest evolutionary relatives like Daspletosaurus, reveal the payload. 40,000 newtons of pressure. 2.5 times the crushing force of a modern saltwater crocodile. Thick serrated teeth act as steel wedges. They drive deep into the prey's femur. Glowing spiderwebs of mechanical stress lines fracture through the bone marrow. The structural integrity fails. The leg shatters into shrapnel. 40,000 newtons erases massive sections of prey in a single kinetic detonation. This is how it fueled the furnace. This is how it solved the calorie paradox. It exploited a loophole in the ecosystem. Because the brutal cold forced every other carnivore in the region to shrink to half its size, the Nanuqsaurus faced zero competition. The dwarfism of its rivals granted it an absolute monopoly on huge prey. It grew massive entirely because everything else surrendered. The true antagonist of this era was not the dinosaur. It was the forge that created it. The Prince Creek Formation in late Cretaceous Alaska, 68 million years ago. A bipolar wasteland. It offered bizarre, endless summer days where temperatures spiked. Then the axis tilted. It plunged into an apocalyptic, 120-day winter. An average winter temperature of -3 degrees Celsius. Cold enough to freeze cellular water. Cold enough to burst capillaries in unprotected flesh. Deafening Arctic winds masked the low-frequency thuds of moving herds. In this pitch-black arena, the Nanuqsaurus stood 140 times larger than its closest predatory competitor. It weighed as much as a fully loaded heavy-duty pickup truck. It carried teeth the size of a human hand. This environment was an ectotherm exclusion zone. Ectotherms, solar-powered biological machines utterly useless in the dark. There were no snakes here. There were no crocodiles. There were no turtles or amphibians. It was a purely warm-blooded battleground, stripped of the reptilian life that dominated the rest of the planet. The Nanuqsaurus conquered the cold. It conquered the dark. It conquered its prey. It stood as the undisputed, unrivaled god of the Arctic night. And yet, we view tropical environments as the ultimate crucible for giant apex predators. We assume extreme cold breeds only scarcity. We think of the ice as a barrier to biological perfection. Nanuqsaurus proves that extreme hardship does not always shrink predators. Sometimes it weaponizes them. It chose to stay while other dinosaurs migrated south to flee the darkness. It claimed absolute dominion over a frozen Hell's Cape. It knew nothing else could challenge it there. But the fossil record tells a second story. A shadow narrative hidden beneath the mechanics of its jaws. Paleontology has never found a fully matured adult Nanuqsaurus. Every skull excavated. Every bone fragment categorized. They all belong to juveniles. They all belong to subadults. We see a massive, terrifying apex predator ruling its domain. But the lack of adult fossils reveals a darker truth. This was not a kingdom. It was a desperate, grinding war of attrition. Even the ultimate biological weapon was constantly losing to the environment. It was born into a world actively trying to kill it. A world of collapsing food webs, freezing temperatures, and endless night. It dominated every living thing it touched. But the world always won. Perhaps this is the true nature of apex survival. Not a long reign, but a brief, violent flash of defiance against an impossible ecosystem. The Nanuqsaurus engineered the perfect chassis for the apocalypse. It built thermal armor. It calibrated chemical radar. It deployed hydraulic weaponry. It did everything perfectly. If the undisputed king of the Arctic could conquer the ice, the dark, and all its prey, yet barely any lived to see adulthood, what chance does any species truly have against the slow, grinding machinery of deep time?